There is a peculiar silence that follows betrayal, not the peaceful kind, but the haunting silence of questions unanswered, love shattered, and trust thrown into the fire. You walk away not just wounded, but wondering, how could they do this to me? Why did it happen here, of all places, with the ones I trusted most? But let me tell you something sacred. That place of betrayal, the very ground where your tears fell and your soul collapsed, is not forgotten. In fact, it's marked. Not with your shame, not with your weakness, but with God's promise. The Bible tells us stories of betrayal, not as footnotes of failure, but as stages of transformation. Joseph was betrayed in a pit, sold by his own brothers, left for dead in a land that was never meant to be his home. Yet it was in Egypt, yes, in the very land of betrayal, that God raised him up, not just to survive, but to reign. Because the God you serve does not waste pain. He does not overlook injustice. He does not sit idle while your heart is being broken by those who should have protected it. God's blessing isn't coming randomly. It's not coming in a place where you feel strong. It's coming precisely where you were brought to your knees, where the knife entered, where the tears flowed, where the rejection echoed loudest. That is where His glory will be revealed. You see, betrayal feels final. It feels like a full stop. But to God, it's a comma. A pause before the plot twist. He's not done. You are not done. The Garden of Gethsemane was a place of betrayal. Jesus was kissed by the one he had broken bread with. But what followed was not defeat. It was resurrection, redemption, power, eternity unlocked. Item 1. What if your betrayal is not your burial ground, but the stage for your becoming? What if the silence after your hurt is simply the hush before heaven opens? What if the place where they mocked you is the same place God will anoint you? Pause and reflect. Do not rush past your wounds. They are the doorway. The ground you're standing on is holy, not because it's painless, but because it is the place God has chosen to reveal Himself. So walk forward, not with bitterness, but with boldness. The pain is real, but so is the promise, because God's blessing is coming exactly where you were betrayed the most. And when it does, it will not be small, quiet, or hidden. It will be undeniable. And those who betrayed you, they will see it. They will witness the rise of the very one they tried to break. Now let us step deeper into this promise with 7 profound truths that reveal how and why God blesses us right in the place of our deepest betrayal. Betrayal is often the birthplace of divine purpose. It is a strange and painful truth that betrayal often becomes the very womb through which divine purpose is birthed. We do not choose betrayal, nor do we welcome it. Yet it arrives uninvited, tearing apart the fabric of trust and leaving behind a wound so deep that it echoes in the chambers of our soul. But in the economy of heaven, even pain is not wasted, especially not betrayal. Look at Joseph, betrayed by his brothers, stripped of his robe and thrown into a pit, not by enemies, but by blood. What seemed like the cruelest injustice was, in truth, the first step in God's plan to elevate him to power in Egypt. The betrayal wasn't a detour from his destiny. It was the way to it. God often begins His greatest works in the most painful moments of our lives. Why? Because betrayal empties us. It strips us of self-reliance. It breaks every illusion that people will always stand by us. And in that emptiness, when the heart cries out in confusion and grief, we become fertile ground for God's voice. We start listening, We start leaning, not on others, but on Him. The pain of betrayal presses us into a deeper surrender. When you are betrayed, you come face to face with the fragility of human loyalty and the unshakable nature of God's. You learn that people may turn their backs on you, but He never will. That's not just comforting, it's transformational. It redirects the course of your life. Betrayal forces you to let go of shallow dreams and cling to something higher. It uncovers the hidden idols of your heart, your need for approval, your dependence on others for validation, and breaks them, often violently. And in their place, God gives you clarity, direction, a call. We see this truth in Scripture again and again. David was betrayed by Saul and hunted like an animal, yet those years in the wilderness shaped him into a king after God's own heart. Jesus himself was betrayed by Judas, yet it was through that betrayal that the cross, our greatest redemption, was set into motion. So if you find yourself in the place of betrayal, do not believe the lie that your life has been derailed. You are not off course. You are in the very place where purpose begins to rise. Like a seed buried in the earth, your life is not ending. It is beginning, just not in the way you imagine. Betrayal hurts. It humbles. It shakes everything that can be shaken. But it also awakens. It opens your eyes to who you really are, and more importantly, who God really is. And when you emerge from it, you will not be the same. You will be wiser, stronger, anointed, and you will carry a purpose that no one can take from you, because it was born in the fire of betrayal and sealed by the hand of God. The place of your pain becomes the altar of your elevation. In the kingdom of God, there are no wasted wounds. What breaks you today may very well become the platform upon which God builds your future. We often pray for blessings and breakthroughs, imagining them to arrive in shining packages wrapped in ease and applause. But God, in His infinite wisdom, does things differently. He chooses the very place of our pain as the foundation for our rising. This is a mystery that defies human logic. Why would God return us to the ground where we were shattered? Why would He choose to bless us in the exact spot where we were broken? Because He is a God of justice, and not just any justice, redemptive justice, the kind that doesn't just repay, but restores. Not in secret, but in public. God doesn't just pull you out of the pit. He raises you up right next to it so everyone can see the contrast between who tried to bury you and what He built from the dirt they threw on your name. This is divine storytelling. When God elevates you, He often chooses to do it in the very location where others said you'd never recover, where people walked away, where doors closed, where your name was whispered in gossip and your character was questioned. That place, that's where He builds the altar, because your elevation is not just about you. It's a testimony, a declaration, a visible sign that God is faithful to those who remain faithful in pain. Imagine Job. After losing everything, his wealth, his family, his health, he sits in ashes. Mocked by his friends, misunderstood by his wife, he pleads with God in desperation. Yet in the same life, in the same land, God restores double what was taken. Not because Job demanded it, but because he endured, he worshipped, he trusted, even when it made no sense. So too will God do with you. Your pain is not just a scar. It is sacred ground, heaven saw it. And now that very place is being transformed. You may not see it yet, but under the surface the soil is stirring. The altar is being built brick by brick, moment by moment, tear by tear. And when the time comes, When God decides the world needs to witness His glory through your story, He will raise you up right where you were cast down. Your enemies won't need to be punished because your elevation will be proof enough. You see, God could have chosen to bless you elsewhere, far away from the memory of betrayal. But He didn't, because He wants you to know that He is Lord, even over the ruins, that He doesn't avoid the broken places, He rebuilds them. And when He is done, the very space that once made you weep will become the space where you worship, where you testify, where you rise. Because in God's hands, the place of pain is never just pain. It's preparation for elevation. God uses broken trust to forge unshakable faith. Trust is delicate. Once broken, it leaves behind not only pain, but a haunting hesitation. One that whispers, "Can I ever trust again?" When the people we lean on become the ones who let us fall, something inside us recoils. We start to see vulnerability as weakness and closeness as danger. But it is in this fragile, exposed place that God begins a deeper work, one that is more intimate, more enduring, and more profound than anything we experienced before. God does not waste the breaking of your heart. In fact, He often allows that breaking so that your faith is no longer tied to people, positions, or even emotions, but solely to Him. When trust in man fails, faith in God has room to grow. He becomes your anchor, not by removing the storm, but by proving that He holds when all else fails. Look at Peter. He trusted in his strength. He swore he would never deny Jesus, but when the pressure came, his words crumbled, and he betrayed the very one he loved. And yet Jesus knew it would happen. He didn't prevent it. He prepared for it. I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail, not that Peter wouldn't fall, but that his faith would survive the fall. And it did, because failure too can be a seed of faith. When people betray you, when trust is broken, when relationships collapse, it forces you to examine the foundation on which you stand. Was your confidence built on the approval of others? Was your peace dependent on the presence of certain people in your life? Betrayal has a painful way of stripping away illusions and forcing you to root yourself in something eternal. Faith born from comfort often remains shallow, but faith forged in fire, that kind of faith doesn't bend. It doesn't waver with moods or seasons. It doesn't depend on everything going right. It is faith that knows God in the dark, not because it sees Him, but because it has felt His hand in silence. Some of your most powerful prayers are born in the agony of betrayal. Some of your deepest encounters with God happen when everyone else walks away. Why? Because the noise of others can drown out His voice, and sometimes only a broken heart is quiet enough to hear Him whisper. So God uses the betrayal. He doesn't endorse it, but He uses it. He takes the shattered pieces of your trust and builds a foundation that no storm can destroy. And in that process, your soul begins to shift. You stop depending on people for stability. You stop needing constant reassurance. You become anchored, not to emotions, but to truth. This is the transformation betrayal brings. What began as heartbreak becomes holy. The pain that once weakened you becomes the very force that strengthens your walk with God. You are no longer tossed by the opinions of others. You are rooted, grounded, unshakable, because faith that survives betrayal is faith that can carry destiny. Where they thought you were finished, God is just getting started. There is something deeply humiliating about being betrayed. It's not just the act itself, it's the message behind it. You're not worth loyalty. You're not strong enough to recover. You're done. That's what betrayal tries to speak into your spirit. It's not merely an attack on your heart, it's an assassination attempt on your identity. It wants to convince you that this is the end of your story. But God sees differently. In fact, what others interpret as your ending, God often declares as your beginning. Because He doesn't measure your worth by what they said, or your strength by what you lost. He knows the plans He has for you, and they are not determined by betrayal. They're revealed through it. Consider Moses, once a prince of Egypt, then exiled and forgotten in the wilderness. People surely believed he had peaked. His time of influence had passed. But God wasn't done. In fact, the wilderness wasn't a punishment, it was preparation. What looked like exile to the world was actually the training ground for leadership. The burning bush didn't appear in the palace, it appeared in the wilderness after the fall. Your life is not over because someone betrayed you. Your purpose is not cancelled because they gave up on you. God does not sign off on your story based on the opinion of broken people. He is the author. He is the finisher. And what looks like failure to others is often divine redirection. Let them believe you're finished. Let them whisper about your fall. Let them mock the mess they think you're trapped in. Because God is not in the business of validation, He's in the business of resurrection. And resurrection only comes after something dies. When Jesus hung on the cross, those around Him believed the story was over. He saved others, but He can't save Himself, they mocked. What they didn't understand was that the silence of Saturday was not the end. It was the setup. Resurrection Sunday was already written. So it is with you. Your silence doesn't mean defeat. Your quiet season doesn't mean God has forgotten. He's doing what only He can do, writing a comeback so stunning that no one, not even you, saw it coming. And when He moves, He doesn't ask for permission. He doesn't need the approval of your betrayers. He doesn't negotiate with your past. He moves with power. He lifts you in a way that silences every accusation. He vindicates in such a way that even your enemies are forced to watch in silence. Because God delights in flipping the narrative. When others write you off, He writes you in. When they count you out, He counts you worthy. So don't be discouraged by the betrayal. It didn't end you. It introduced the part of your story where God begins something new. Heaven records what earth forgets. Your tears are stored, not ignored. There's something profoundly heartbreaking about crying alone. The world may never notice the tears you wipe away in secret. They see your smile, your strength, your calm surface, but not the storm within. Not the nights when your soul is shattered and your heart pleads silently for someone to see, to care, to hold you. But what if I told you that every tear you've shed, every single one, has been noticed, counted, and kept by God? Psalm 56:8 tells us, "You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book." What a staggering image. God, the creator of galaxies, bends low enough to gather your tears. Not one drop is wasted. Not one cry is lost in the silence. While the world may move on, forget, or dismiss your pain, heaven keeps a detailed record. It is divine justice at work. Quiet, patient, certain. People often underestimate the damage their betrayal causes. They think time will erase it. They hope silence will bury it. But God doesn't operate like man. He sees what others are too blind to recognize. He hears what others are too careless to listen to. And when He sees you weeping, whether in your room, in your car, or behind a fake smile, He leans in closer. This is not just comfort. It is evidence of divine intimacy. Your pain is not forgotten. It is stored. Stored for what? For redemption, for vindication, for reward. God does not bottle tears for sentiment. He bottles them for justice. One day those tears will speak louder than words. They will testify on your behalf. They will be poured out not in sorrow, but in glory. And what's even more powerful is this: the more private the pain, the more personal the blessing. When God sees you stay silent instead of lashing out, when He watches you forgive instead of retaliate, when you trust instead of curse, He is not just pleased, He is moved. You've honored Him in the dark, and He will honor you in the light. There are people who caused your tears and walked away as if nothing happened. They thought it was over, but they forgot one thing. The Judge of all the earth was watching, and He does not forget. God is not petty, but He is precise. He doesn't react emotionally, He responds righteously. One day, the tears you cried in secret will become the rain that waters your blessing. What broke you will make you. What emptied you will fill you. And those who wounded you will have no choice but to witness what God does with a broken heart that refuses to let go of faith. You may not feel seen, but you are. You may not feel heard, but you are. You may not feel remembered, but heaven has not missed a single detail. And that bottle of tears, it's not just a collection of sorrow, it's a prophecy, a record that declares, this pain will not be in vain. The betrayal set the stage, but God writes the finale. There is a temptation to believe that the ones who hurt you get the final say. When betrayal hits, especially from those closest to you, it feels like they've sealed your fate. They've taken something sacred and shattered it. You look around and see nothing but the debris of broken trust, lost opportunities, and crushed spirit. It seems like they have written the ending and you were left voiceless. But here is the truth the enemy doesn't want you to know. They may have started the chapter, but God writes the last word. He is not just a savior, He is a storyteller. And the author never lets betrayal be the final scene. Think of the story of Job. His life was devastated, not because he did anything wrong, but because he was chosen for a test he never saw coming. The people around him, including his friends, believed the story was over. They pointed fingers. They criticized his faith. They accused him of secret sin. But God had not finished. Job's ending was greater than his beginning, not despite the pain, but because of it. The betrayal became the backdrop for divine intervention. When people betray you, they are operating from a limited view. They think they are powerful enough to damage your destiny. They think that by walking away, slandering you, or breaking your spirit, they have reshaped your future. But your future is not in their hands. It never was. God has a habit of flipping scripts. He allows certain things to be written, betrayal, failure, abandonment, not to destroy the story, but to make the conclusion undeniable. The plot twist is coming, and when it does, the very people who thought you were finished will be forced to watch as God rewrites everything. Your betrayal was real, your pain was real, but so is your promise. You were not abandoned in the fire, you were refined by it. You were not cursed by their actions. You were positioned by God's purpose. He is sovereign, even over their cruelty. He is still in control. You are not defined by who walked away. You are defined by who remained. And that is the God of heaven. He doesn't need approval from those who betrayed you to bless you. In fact, He delights in blessing you in front of them. Not to embarrass, but to reveal that His hand was on you the whole time. So let them write what they want, let them say what they will. Their words are not final, their betrayal is not eternal. Their exit from your life is not the end of your story, because the one who breathed life into you is still holding the pen. And when he writes, it is beautiful, it is just, it is full of restoration. The last chapter will not be one of defeat, it will be one of divine reversal. It meant to end you, but God meant to elevate you, and the finale is his. There is something sacred, almost poetic, about the way God handles those who wounded you, not with vengeance in the way man desires, but with justice that transcends revenge. He does not stoop to their level, he rises above it. And when he blesses you, he does so in a way that leaves no doubt. Not only were you favored, but you were never forsaken. When people betray you, they often assume they've won. They expect your silence to mean defeat. They mistake your pain for weakness and your retreat for collapse. But they forget one thing: God never stops working just because they walked away. In fact, sometimes he does his best work in the silence, when no one is watching, when the room is empty and your heart is broken. That is when heaven begins to build. And here's what God often does. He blesses you not in hiding, but in front of the very people who thought they buried you. Not to satisfy your ego, but to reveal his glory. Because the ones who caused your tears need to see what divine restoration looks like. Not to shame them, but to awaken them. Your elevation becomes their revelation. Look at the story of Hannah, mocked by Peninnah for years because she was barren, ridiculed even as she came faithfully to the temple. Yet when God gave her Samuel, he didn't do it quietly. He did it so publicly that the child became a prophet, a leader, a symbol of answered prayer. Peninnah didn't just hear about Hannah's blessing, she watched it grow up. And so it will be with you. The people who spoke against you will one day speak of you. The people who left you empty will see you overflow. The ones who predicted your downfall will witness your rise, and they will be stunned, not because you fought them, but because you didn't have to. You let God fight. You let heaven write the story. And now the chapters are turning in your favor. Your blessing isn't just for you. It's a divine announcement. An unfolding of God's justice in the presence of those who thought they were authors of your ending, but they forgot. God holds the pen. They mocked you in the valley, but they'll watch you climb the mountain. They spread lies in your absence, but they'll see truth walk with you in your return. They assumed your silence meant surrender, but it was the stillness before the storm of God's favor. This is what happens when you refuse to respond with bitterness and instead walk in obedience. When you surrender your pain instead of seeking payback, God elevates you in such a way that no words are needed. Your life becomes the answer. Your healing becomes the proof. They will watch, not because you want revenge, but because God wants redemption. Because the ones who crushed you need to see that grace builds what hatred cannot destroy. That favor falls on those who trust, not those who betray. So walk boldly. You don't need to justify your pain to those who caused it. You don't need to explain the journey. Just walk. Just rise. Just trust. Because the same people who hurt you in secret will witness God's blessing in public. And now, beloved soul, if you've walked through betrayal, know this: you are not forgotten. Not by heaven. Not by the God who sees all, hears all, and records all. You may have lost people, but you've never lost the one who matters most. He is still writing your story. You were betrayed, yes, but it was never meant to end there. That place of betrayal is not your grave. It is the garden where something divine is growing, something eternal, something unstoppable. God's blessing is coming exactly where they broke you. Not somewhere else, not sometime far away, but there, where your trust was shattered, where your voice trembled, where your strength gave out. That place is now marked for blessing, for healing, for glory. Let those who hurt you see what God does with the wounded. Let them see what heaven does with heartbreak. Because when God restores, He doesn't just make it right, He makes it beautiful. And not in hiding, but in the open. In the very space they said you'd never rise from. So hold your head high, keep your spirit clean, walk with grace, because the author of all things is not done with you, and His next chapter will silence every doubt and overshadow every betrayal. They thought they buried you, but God is about to bless you, right where they betrayed you the most. And when He does, you'll understand why the betrayal had to happen, because the blessing will be greater than you imagined, and it will be seen by all